Hi guys. Module 5 homework, trinomials. I just want to make the comment just to kind of show the importance. Everything we do in here is really important, but factoring is probably the #1 thing that's important. It's something that we're going to do from here on out in almost every problem in this course, in the next course, and I feel like almost all courses. So it's something that's really important. That's why I'm so diligent in it. So please, if you have any questions, please let us know. So module 5, homework 2 is talking about factoring. Monic. Monic means that our A value is going to be 1, and we'll talk about what A is in just a second. Trinomials. Trinomials means 3 terms. In the previous section in homework 1, we did factor by grouping, and that was with 4 terms. But then now we have 3 terms. So before we get to that, let's talk about multiplying x minus 2 times x plus 5. Straight from test 1. We're going to distribute, we're going to multiply. So if we have x minus 2 times x plus 5, we are going to distribute. Which means we're going to multiply. And if you want to say FOIL, that's fine too. I just don't usually use that because I want something that works every single time no matter what. But that's fine. So let's distribute x times everything. So x times x will give us x squared. Remember, whenever you multiply, you add the exponents. X times positive 5 would give us plus 5x. So we did x times everything. Now let's do negative 2 times everything. So negative 2 times x will give us negative 2x. Negative 2 times positive 5 would give us negative 10. So now let's combine like terms. X squared plus 5x minus 2x plus 10. So our like terms are 5x minus 2x. So we have x squared. 5x minus 2x would give us positive 3x minus 10. So this would be our answer. X squared plus 3x minus 10. This is what's considered a monic trinomial. Monic because our a value in front of x squared is positive 1. We have 1x squared. And trinomial because negative 10. So a couple things before we move on. Notice this up here is our factored form. Remember factored form? Oh, form, I don't know what I was writing. Factored form. And this would be our standard form. Our factored form and our standard form. So factored form, remember, are 2 things that are being multiplied together. So x minus 2 times x plus 5, we can multiply those 2 factors together to give it an all multiplied out standard form. So before, let's do this next problem, then I'm going to come back to this problem. So pause that thought. So it says find 2 integers. Integers are just whole numbers. Whose sum, remember sum means you're going to add. Whose sum is 6 and whose product, remember product means you're going to multiply, is 8. So they're going to add up to give us 6 and then we multiply to give us 8. So let's see, 2 numbers that we're going to multiply together to give us 8 and the same 2 numbers that we're going to add together to give us 6. So what 2 numbers work to satisfy both conditions? Same number here, same number here. 2 times 4. 2 times 4 would give us 8. Also 2 plus 4 would give us 6. So notice 2 and 4 are only numbers that will work here. 2 and 4 are only numbers that will work here. Doesn't matter what order, you can also do 4 times 2 would give us 8. And 4 plus 2 would give us 6. Same thing, doesn't matter. Our 2 numbers here are 2 and 4. So this is going to be super important, this little template that we drew here. Because if you notice, if we don't apply it to the same thing up here, notice that these 2 numbers multiply together, negative 2 times positive 5 to give us negative 10. And so they multiply together. And these 2 numbers also add together, just like we did here, negative 2 plus 5 to give us this positive 3. So let me say that again. Just like we did here, two numbers that multiply together to give us 8, two numbers that add together to give us 6. But look at it up here. Two numbers that multiply together, so negative 2 times 5 gave us negative 10. And they added together negative 2 plus 5 to give us this positive 3. So do you see the correlation? Keep that in mind for this next one. It says factor the following expression completely. So I was thinking, sorry. Factor the following expression completely. Z squared plus 15z plus 54. Our first step in factoring, no matter what, is GCF. But looking at z squared plus 15z plus 54, there's nothing that all three terms have in common. This one doesn't have any z's. This one only has a 1 in front of it, so no number in common. So there's no GCF besides positive 1, which won't really change our problem. So no GCF. So always look for GCF first, just like we talked about at the end of Module 5 Homework 1. So just bear with me for a second and I'll kind of bring it full circle. This is in standard form, just like we talked about up here. Our standard form is going to be ax squared plus bx plus c. So same thing here, ax squared plus bx plus c. This is our standard form. Now, a, b, and c are just numbers. I know in our standard form I wrote x, and in this example we have z's, but same concept. We're just using this to show us that, okay, our a value, our number in front of z squared, is positive 1. Our b value, which is the number in front of z, is positive 15. And our c value, which is our constant out back, constant means there's no variables, is positive 54. So we're going to use this template every single time and just fill in a new value for a, b, and c based off of the problem. So just like we did up here, before I say that. So usually, I have like so many things going through my mind. I'm sorry. I'm trying to make this so easy. But it's something that's not very easy. So that's what I'm thinking about here. So if we have z squared plus 15z plus 54, always take out our GCF first. In the past, we did factor by grouping. Factor by grouping means group the first two, group the last two. But I don't have 4 terms here, so I can't group the first two, group the last two. So what we're going to do is to split up this middle b term. We need to split up this bx, this 15z. So that way I can group the first two, group the last two, factor by grouping like we did in homework 1. But how do I split up 15z? There's a million ways to split up 15z. But I need to make it where it factors like we did up here. So notice this 3x, if we were to work backwards, we split up 3x by 5x and 2x. So remember, those two numbers added together, negative 2 plus 5x, added together to give us 3, and then multiplied together to give us this negative 10. So they added together to give us this b, and they added together to give us this n value right here. So we're going to be looking for, just like we did in this problem, two numbers that multiply together and the same two numbers that add together. So just like this problem up here, let's do our little template. It's going to be the same template every single time, super organized, just different numbers. So we're looking for two numbers that multiply together to give us this n number. So it's going to be a times c. So always a times c. A in this case is 1, c is 54. So 1 times 54, which is 54. And the same two numbers that add together to give us b, which is 15. So the same two numbers that multiply together to give us a times c, so 54, and the same two numbers that add together to give us b, which is 15. So 6 and 9. 6 times 9 is 54. 6 plus 9 is 15. Notice same number here, same number here. 6 and 9 are the only two numbers that will work to satisfy both conditions. Only two numbers that will multiply together to give us 54 and add together to give us 15. It doesn't matter what order. If you want to do 9 and then 6, that's fine. Your work will look a little bit different, but you'll get the same answer in the end, so it doesn't matter. So remember, the point in this is that we're going to use these two numbers to split up our middle 15z. So z squared is going to stay the same. We're going to split up this 15z using the numbers in our blanks, so positive 6z, positive 9z. We're not changing the problem because 6z plus 9z adding together combined like terms will still give us 15z plus 54. Remember, distributing is multiplying, which is the opposite. So we are doing the opposite. We're working our way backwards, working our way now from standard form to factored form. So now we're at this step. So now we have four terms, z squared plus 6z plus 9z plus 54. Now there's four terms. So now we can factor by grouping, just like we did on test one, or sorry, homework one. We can group the first two, group the last two. Looking at our first two, z squared plus 6z. They both have z in common, so I can factor or divide out positive z. That's z's. Marker's hard, so it doesn't write that fine. So z is coming out as our GCF. We're left over with z squared divided by z. That will leave us with z. Plus 6z divided by z. These will cancel out. We're left with 6. Looking at our next two terms, remember we want z plus 6 to be left over. 9z plus 54, they both have a positive 9 in common, so I can factor or divide out that positive 9. We're left over with 9's cancel out with z, plus 54 divided by 9, which would give us 6. You know we did it right because they both have z plus 6 in common, so that will be one factor. Dividing out those z plus 6, taking out the z plus 6's, we're left over with z plus 9 as our other factor. So z plus 6 is a factor, z plus 9 is a factor. If I were to multiply these two factors together and distribute, we would get back to z squared plus 15z plus 54. So remember, these two numbers, 6 plus 9, multiply together to give us 54, and add together 6 plus 9 to give us 15. Keep that in common. So this was our standard form. This is our factored form. All right, so now that you kind of know what to expect, let's roll through this next one. So factor the following expression completely. Y squared plus 2y minus 8. Our first step in factoring, no matter what, is GCF, but there's nothing besides positive 1 they have in common, y squared plus 2y minus 8. So there's no GCF that will really help us here. So no GCF to factor out. This is in standard form, or ax squared plus bx plus c. So that will help us to see that a in front of y squared is positive 1, b in front of y is positive 2, c out by itself is negative 8. So here's our little template. We're looking for two numbers that multiply together to give us a times c, 1 times negative 8, which is negative 8. Side note, the reason why I say a times c, remember in this homework it's monic. Monic means that a is always 1. So in this case it doesn't really matter, but in the next homework it's going to be general trinomial. So a is not going to be 1, so this a times c will kind of come into play more so. So plus, or blank plus blank will equal our b value, which is 2. So it's always a times c and then b. So what two numbers will multiply together to give us negative 8 and add together to give us positive 2? For a lot of students, this is the hardest part, is filling out the blanks. And this just comes with practice. I know they have to have different signs in order to give me a negative number whenever it's being multiplied. So one's positive, one's negative. And then whenever I add them together, the bigger one needs to be positive to make this one positive. So I'm thinking negative 2 and positive 4. Negative 2 times positive 4 is negative 8. Negative 2 plus 4 would give us positive 2. So remember, we're going to use our numbers in our blank to split up this middle b term. So y squared is going to stay the same. Instead of our 2y, we're going to use our numbers in our blanks to split up that 2y. So negative 2y, positive 4y, and then bringing down this negative 8. So now we have four terms. Now we can factor by grouping. So grouping the first two, grouping the last two. Looking at our first two, y squared minus 2y, GCF. They both have a y in common. So let's factor or divide out that positive y. Y squared divided by y means we're left with 1y. Negative 2y divided by y, our y's cancel out, we're left with negative 2. So y times y minus 2. Looking at our next two, 4y minus 8. I know behind the scenes that I want y minus 2 to be left over, so that'll kind of help me see my GCF. But 4y minus 8, they both have a positive 4 in common, so I can factor or divide out positive 4. In doing so, we're left over with, our 4's cancel, we're left over with y. Negative 8 divided by positive 4 is negative 2. So we have y times y minus 2 plus 4 times y minus 2. We know we did it right because they both have y minus 2 in common, so that will be one factor. Taking out our y minus 2, we're left over with our other factor of y plus 4. So y minus 2 times y plus 4 will be our final answer. If I were to multiply those two factors together, I would get back to my original problem. I always get the question, so I'm going to go ahead and address it here. It's the same thing as saying, Mindy, hush. Sorry. She listens so well. Y plus 4 times y minus 2. I can switch those around, and it's the same thing. I'm multiplying, so I can multiply in any order, and it will give me the same answer. So I could also say y plus 4, y minus 2. Same thing. Doesn't matter what order. So pause for a second and go from there. Because we're all about shortcuts in math. So notice A is 1, because in all of these they're monic, so that means A is always going to be 1. But if you notice, our numbers in our blank lead us directly to our answer. So our variable z, and in our blank is positive 6, so that would give us z plus 6 as one factor, and positive 9, so that would give us z plus 9 as our other factor. Usually in an in-person class, we kind of talk through this a little bit more, but because I feel like I don't really have your input here, I'm just going to kind of show you. But usually we would kind of discover this on our own. But so let's look at this example. A is 1, so this shortcut will work. Y is our variable, and our blank is negative 2 and positive 4. So that would negative 2, positive 4. So that will lead us straight to our factors of y minus 2 and y plus 4. So this is a little shortcut we can use only when A is 1, but that'll be a huge shortcut because we can go straight from here to our factors. Oops, sorry. So let's try this little shortcut on our next example. So factor the following expression completely. Minus 10y plus 24. So our first step in factoring, no matter what, is GCF, y squared minus 10y plus 24. Nothing besides positive 1 they all have in common, so we have no GCF to factor out. So this is the standard form like we've been doing of ax squared plus bx plus c. So this will tell us that a in front of y squared is positive 1, b in front of y is negative 10, and c out by itself is 24. So we are looking for two numbers that multiply together to give us a times c, 1 times 24, which is 24, and the same two numbers to add together to give us b, which is negative 10. All right, I know in order to multiply together to give us a positive 24, that means both numbers have to have the same sign. In order to add together to give us negative 10, that means they both must be negative. So both negative. Let's see what numbers. 6 and 4. So let's see, negative 6 times negative 4 is positive 24. Negative 6 plus negative 4 would give us negative 10. So negative 6 and negative 4 are the only two numbers that work. So let's try that little shortcut that we're talking about. By the way, if you don't like the shortcut, it's totally fine. Factor by grouping like we did in these past two examples, and you're going to get the same answer every single time. But if you want a little shortcut, because I know everyone's looking for a shortcut because we all are short on time, here's a little option for you. So remember, A is 1. We can only do this when A is 1. So we can use our shortcut. A is 1, so we can use our shortcut. Our shortcut says that we go straight to our two factors. So we know we're going to have two factors. So it says y squared. Our variable is y. And then in our blanks are -6. So that means y minus 6 is one factor. And then -4. So y minus 4 is our other factor. Let's do this over. Done. I didn't have to factor by grouping. None of that. So much better, right? So y minus 6 times y minus 4. Y minus 6 is a factor. Y minus 4 is a factor. Multiply your two factors together. You would get back to your original problem. Super cool. So let's try another one. Let's do one more with our shortcut. It says factor x squared minus 3x minus 10. We always want to look for our GCF, but there's nothing that y squared negative 3x negative 10 have in common besides positive 1. So nothing to factor out, so no GCF. So this is in standard form. So we have our ax squared plus bx plus c. So a in front of x squared is positive 1. B in front of x is negative 3. C out by itself is negative 10. So our little template blanks here. We're looking for two numbers that multiply together to give us a times c. So a is 1 times c, which is negative 10. So two numbers that multiply together to give us negative 10. And the same two numbers that add together to give us b, which in this case is negative 3. So what two numbers multiply together to give us negative 10 and add together to give us negative 3? Okay, again, I know they have to be different signs in order to multiply together to give me a negative. So one positive, one negative. The bigger number should be negative to give me negative 3 whenever I add them together. So I'm thinking 5 and 2. So negative 5, because 5 is bigger, and positive 2. Negative 5 times positive 2 is negative 10. Negative 5 plus 2 will give us negative 3. So same number, only two numbers that'll work. So thankfully, our a value is 1. So we can use our shortcut. Our shortcut says we can go straight to our two factors. X is our variable. In our blank is negative 5. So x minus 5 is one factor, is one answer. Our other blank is positive 2. So x plus 2 is our other factor. Done. X minus 5 is a factor, x plus 2 is a factor. Multiply our two factors together, we get back to our original problem. Oops, sorry. So our final answer here is x minus 5 times x plus 2. X minus 5 times x plus 2. All right, these last two were kind of tricky. So I want to go back to our factor by grouping because it's kind of hard to use our GCF, our shortcut for this one, because we have multiple variables going on. So if we have x squared plus 5xy plus 6y squared, it says factor the. So our first step in factoring, no matter what, is GCF, but there's nothing that x squared plus 5xy plus 6y squared have in common to factor out. So no GCF. But same thing like we've been doing. Our a in front of x squared is positive 1. Our b in front of xy is positive 5. Our c at the end is positive 6. So we're looking for two numbers that multiply together to give us a times c, so 1 times 6, which is 6. And the same two numbers that add together to give me b, which in this case is 5. So 2 times 3 is 6, and then 2 plus 3 is 5. So because this one's kind of weird with our variables, let's go ahead and let's factor by grouping and kind of bring it back to the beginning. So remember, factor by grouping means that we're going to use the numbers in our blanks to split up this middle b term, so to split up 5xy. So we have x squared. We're going to use the numbers in our blank to split up 5xy. So we have positive 2xy, and then we have positive 3xy plus 6y squared. So now we have four terms. So now we can factor by grouping. meaning we can group the first two, group the last two. Looking at our first two, x squared plus 2xy. They both have an x in common, so I can factor or divide out that x. In doing so, x squared divided by x will leave us with 1x. 2xy divided by x, our x's are going to cancel. We're left with positive 2y. Looking at our next two terms, in the back of my mind, I know I want x plus 2y to be left over, so use that to kind of help you if needed. But looking at 3xy plus 6y squared, GCF, they both have a 3 in common, and they both have y in common. So positive 3y is going to be our GCF that we're going to factor out. And let's see what's left over. So 3xy divided by y. 3's cancel, y's cancel, we're left with x. 6y squared divided by 3y. We're left over with positive 2y. We know we did it right because they both have x plus y in common. So that'll be one factor, x plus 2y. Taking out x plus 2y, we're left over with our other factor of x plus 3y. So x plus 3y. And this is our answer. X plus 2y times x plus 3y. If we were to multiply those back together, we would get back to our original problem. So notice, you can still use a shortcut here, just a little bit tricky. So x is our first variable, and our blank is positive 2 and positive 3, and then our second variable is y, so those y's go at the end. Honestly, for a problem like this, I would just factor by grouping to not get stuff, even me, just to not get stuff confused. It took us, what, 2 extra steps, so it's not that big of a deal. All right, let's look at this last one. Factor the following expression completely. 8y cubed plus 120y squared plus 432y. Don't get freaked out by the big numbers. Let's look for a GCF. Here they do have a GCF. 8 goes into 8, 120, and 432. So they all have an 8 in common. This one has 3 y's, 2 y's, and 1 y. So now they all have 1 y in common as well. So our GCF here would be 8y. So let's factor or divide out 8y from all three terms. So remember, this 8y goes out front. Is our GCF. And let's see what we're left over with. 8y cubed divided by 8y. 8 divided by 8 goes to 1. I have 3 y's. I'm taking away 1 y. That means 2 y's are left over, so y squared. 120y squared divided by 8y. 120 divided by 8 would leave us with 15. So plus 15. Y squared divided by y. I have 2 y's. I'm taking away 1 y. That means 1 y is left over. And then 432 divided by 8 would leave us with positive 54. We have 1 y. We're taking away 1 y. Our y's go away. So now we're left to factor y squared plus 15y plus 54. 8y is already a factor. It's already an answer. Done. I'm trying to factor y squared plus 15y plus 54. This is in standard form of ax squared plus bx plus c. So a in front of y squared is positive 1. B in front of y is positive 15. C out by itself is 54. Did we not do these numbers before? I factor so much it all goes together. We're looking for two numbers that multiply together. Oh yeah, we did. Okay. So we know 6 and 9 is going to be an answer. So two numbers that multiply together to give us a times c. So 1 times 54, which is 54. And the same two numbers to add together to give me b, which is 15. Just like we said on the previous page, we did this and we got 6 and 9. So 6 times 9 is 54. 6 plus 9 is 15. Remember, don't get confused with this 8y. That's already an answer. That's already done. So if you need to cover it up just to kind of forget about it, you do you. So thankfully, a is 1 here. So if you want to go back to our shortcut, we can. A is 1. So we can use our shortcut if you want. If you don't want to, that's totally fine. Go back to factor by grouping. So, but if you want to use your shortcut, go ahead. So y is our variable, and our blank is positive 6 and positive 9. So y plus 6 is one factor, y plus 9 is our other factor. Don't forget to bring down your GCF of 8y out front. because that was already an answer. So then now putting all of our answers together, here's our final answer. 8y times y plus 6 times y plus 9. The reason why you can't forget to bring down that 8y is in order to get our back to our original problem, whenever you multiply this together, you have to have that 8y. So if you were to multiply this all back together, you get back to your original problem. So again, our final answer is 8y times y plus 6 times y plus 9. And that is all of Module 5, Homework 2. You can now work on your Module 5, Homework 2 homework assignment. If you have any questions, please let me know. If not, thanks for watching.